After 3 years of exile, Robert Davis brought his first love to pick me up. He said, "I heard you've learned your lesson. I'll give you one more chance to mend your ways. Sarah Thompson is gentle and graceful. Learn from her and stop causing trouble." Everyone thought I would cry and plead, clinging to him like a lifeline. But I just calmly lowered my head and bowed deeply in thanks. Robert Davis frowned. "Emily Miller, I'm your fiancé. You don't need to be so distant with me." I smiled. Not for long. 3 years of torment. I had finally accumulated enough points. In 10 more days, I could permanently leave this world. From then on, Emily Miller would rest in peace, far from you. I had just returned from a remote mountain town and hadn't even had time to change into clean clothes when I was rushed to the clearing at the edge of the town. Over a dozen luxury cars were parked there. The black SUV at the front belonged to Robert Davis. Before I even got close, I heard the noisy chatter. I stopped slowly behind a tree. 3 years is a long time. I wonder what our spoiled princess is like now. What princess if the Davis family hadn't adopted her? She'd be sleeping on the streets. Emily Miller is a bit pampered and wild. Letting her suffer a little to temper her nature is for her own good. I immediately recognized the last soft female voice as Sarah Thompson's. She was Robert Davis's first love, the one he couldn't have in his youth. She had lived at the Davis family estate for most of the years since returning to the country. 3 years ago, during an argument, I accidentally injured Sarah Thompson. Robert Davis forcefully sent me to a remote mountain town. As he left, he said, "If you haven't changed in 3 years, I'll keep you locked away for another 6, another 10 years. Emily Miller, how could you be so vicious at such a young age? I punished you for your own good. If you don't change this nature, how can you be a Davis family daughter-in-law? It's for my good. So, you abandoned me alone in this small, isolated community to be bullied, left me without a penny to fend for myself, and cut off all contact with the outside world, turning me into a mute and a deaf person." I wanted to laugh, but couldn't. The wind in the remote mountain town was cold. My dry, yellowed hair was blown messy, sticking to my cheeks and forehead like straw. My face, once full and tender, now looked like a wrinkled green date soaked in water. At the age of 22, I already had fine lines. Sarah Thompson was right. The last incident, she was generous not to call the police. Otherwise, I would have been sent to the police station long ago. Sarah Thompson smiled. I didn't want to make Robert uncomfortable either. Emily Miller is his fiancée, after all, she said, glancing at Robert Davis, her eyes slightly moist. What do you think Emily Miller's reaction will be when she sees Robert? What do you mean? She'll definitely cry her eyes out. Then she'll cling to him and refuse to let go. Coming here, this place is truly poor. All dirt roads. With Emily Miller's delicate nature, she must have suffered enough this time. Robert Davis gave a cold smile. I came myself to see if she's truly reformed. If she hasn't changed. Robert Davis's voice was flat. Then she'll stay for another 3 years. What about your wedding? Sarah Thompson bit her lip, looking at him nervously. The wedding will naturally have to be postponed. Sarah Thompson lowered her eyes in slight disappointment. Just then, someone with sharp eyes spotted me. Is that Emily Miller? No way. Is that country girl Emily Miller? How is that possible? I know what Emily Miller looks like. Shock filled everyone's eyes. Robert, it looks like it is Emily Miller. Sarah Thompson naturally took Robert Davis's arm and pointed at me. Look at the necklace on her neck. Robert Davis's gaze finally fell slowly on my face, then settled on the necklace. When his people forcefully took me from the Davis family estate, I wasn't wearing any jewelry, except for this unremarkable silver necklace, my mother's. He hadn't let them take it off. Emily Miller. Robert Davis's voice was cold when he called my name, completely different from Sarah Thompson's gentle tone. If it were before, I would have felt incredibly wronged and started arguing with him out of jealousy. But now, my heart was like a withered leaf swirling in the autumn wind, devoid of joy or sorrow. Mr. Davis, I said, pushing a strand of messy hair behind my ear. Robert Davis furrowed his brow slightly. I heard you've learned your lesson. I'll give you one more chance to mend your ways. Sarah Thompson is gentle and kind. When you return to the city, you should learn more from her. Stop causing trouble all the time and making the family worry. I just nodded slightly. Robert Davis's eyebrows furrowed even tighter. Before, I was lively and talked a lot, and he found it annoying, frowning whenever he saw me. Now I was as he wished, silent. He was still annoyed, but I no longer cared or worried about his moods. I just stood with my head lowered, like a broken branch, without any emotion. Emily Miller, what happened to your foot? A girl in the crowd suddenly spoke, looking at me in surprise, with a hint of sympathy in her eyes. I glanced down. Oh, the first winter was too cold. I was learning to chop wood and hit my foot with the log. My toenail fell off and never grew back. I curled my foot, but I was wearing a pair of sandals that had broken several times. There was no way to hide it, so I just let it be. Why didn't you tell me you were injured? Why didn't you use the money I gave you to buy medicine? Robert Davis's voice grew colder. I didn't quite understand why he was so angry. I could only lower my head further, hoping he would suppress his anger and take me back to New York City. There was one more thing I had to do. Forget it. It's getting late. Just come back with me. As soon as Robert Davis finished speaking, I bowed deeply to him. Mr. Davis, thank you. My voice was soft, but every word was clear. The air suddenly became very quiet. Only the wind, sometimes distant, sometimes near, let out sharp whistles. Perhaps the people in the circle were curious about what I had become after 3 years. Perhaps more people wanted to see me humiliated. There were a good 20 people here, yet now they were all silent, not speaking. Even Sarah Thompson's eyes were slightly wide. Robert Davis was stunned for a moment, then seemed to suddenly grow angry. Emily Miller, I'm your fiancé. You don't need to act so submissive with me. I know you resent me for sending you here for 3 years, but you were the one who attacked first. Sarah Thompson almost lost an eye back then. I took a deep breath, suppressing the turbulent emotions in my heart. I squeezed my hands tightly. My fingers, rough and calloused from manual labor without manicures, felt like they might pierce my palms. But in the end, I said nothing. In 10 more days, I would permanently leave this world. Everything about them would be irrelevant to me. Thinking of this, I felt a sense of relief. Sarah, I said, I'm very sorry about what happened back then. I bowed deeply again. This time it was to Sarah Thompson, bending even lower, deeper than the previous bow. Robert Davis's face was pale with rage, his jaw clenched tight. After a full half-minute, he suddenly stepped forward and grabbed my wrist. Emily Miller, whatever you're planning, I'm warning you. Don't you dare hurt Sarah Thompson and her child again. One more time, and I'll be even harsher. He dragged me to the car, pushed me inside. I can bring you home, and I can send you back again. I looked up at him calmly. It felt like the first time I had truly looked at him today. In this alternate world, I became an orphan at 3. The Davis family adopted me. I treated them as my family. I loved Robert Davis when I was young and innocent, and later we became engaged. Then I watched him bring Sarah Thompson and her child to live under the same roof with us. I watched him favor them, protect them, treating me like a monster. I had cried, made scenes, broken down, panicked, even considered suicide, but I never thought of harming Sarah Thompson or her child. But no one believed me except my adoptive mother. Unfortunately, when I was sent away, my adoptive mother was already very ill, sometimes clear-headed, sometimes delirious. She couldn't protect me anymore. Mr. Davis, don't worry. I won't be willful anymore. I'll change. Perhaps my docility pleased him. Perhaps he felt a little pity for my current miserable state. The cold anger in Robert Davis's eyes seemed to subside a bit. He even reached out and brushed a strand of hair from my ear. Emily Miller, if you had been like this earlier, you wouldn't have suffered these 3 years. When we get back, get along well with Sarah Thompson. Treat her like a sister, just like I do. I looked at him and smiled faintly. Sister, how ridiculous. Okay. Robert Davis patted my head. Go clean yourself up properly when you get back. Don't let Mom see you like this. Okay. I lowered my gaze, quiet and obedient. Robert Davis seemed to frown, glancing at his fingers. He had just touched my face. My face was rough from the wind, cracking in the winter. He knew better than anyone how much I used to care about my appearance. My bedroom had already been taken by Sarah Thompson. My music room had become Sarah Thompson's son's study. The entire second floor used to be just Robert Davis and me. Now it was the three of them, so much like a family. Sarah Thompson pulled my sleeve, her face full of apology. Emily Miller, I'll have the staff clear the room immediately. Please don't be angry. I can stay in the guest room. I pulled my arm away, wanting to take a shower and change before going to see my adoptive mother. But Sarah Thompson pulled me back. Emily Miller, are you angry? Don't worry, I won't compete with you. I'll have Timmy Thompson clear his things out immediately. Why should I move out? Uncle Robert said this is my home. I can live wherever I want. Sarah Thompson's son, Timmy Thompson, ran downstairs, crying and yelling. Sarah Thompson quickly went to comfort him, but Timmy Thompson suddenly picked up a mug and threw it at my face. Sarah Thompson tried to stop him, but couldn't. The mug missed my face, but hit my knee hard. Sarah Thompson glanced at me, bit her lip, and surprisingly slapped Timmy Thompson. How can you be so disobedient? Uncle Robert was just being polite. You can't take it seriously. This isn't your home. It's your Aunt Emily Miller's home. You don't have a home. Do you understand? Sarah Thompson started sobbing as she spoke. When Robert Davis came in, he saw the scene of the mother and son crying in each other's arms. Uncle Robert, are you going to kick Mom and me out? Who said that? Uncle Robert would never kick you out. Robert Davis bent down and picked him up. Then why did she make us move rooms as soon as she came back? Uncle Robert, I don't want to live in the guest room. Robert Davis's face gradually darkened. Emily Miller, why are you still so stubborn? You just got home, and you're already causing trouble. They are a poor mother and son. Can't you have some sympathy? Robert, don't say that. This is Emily Miller and your home. Timmy Thompson and I are just outsiders. Sarah Thompson lowered her head, weeping, looking even more pitiful at this moment. Robert Davis's face was livid. The rooms don't need to be changed. You two stay where you are. There are plenty of empty rooms in the house for you. Robert Davis looked at me displeased. If you have any complaints, come to me. If you want to cry, make a scene or lay a hand on them. Emily Miller, you know I won't let you get away with it. I looked at Sarah Thompson. She gave a few choked sobs and averted her gaze. I then looked at Timmy Thompson. His tearful eyes were filled with smugness. Finally, I looked at Robert Davis. He seemed to be waiting for me, expecting me to be jealous and easily angered like before. But I was as calm as a deep pool, even smiling faintly. Okay, no need to change. I can stay anywhere. The guest room is fine too. I said it flatly, picked up my worn canvas bag from the floor and walked upstairs. It was only 10 days anyway. I just had to get through it. Even the guest room was better than that leaky shack in the small, isolated community. I wasn't picky. After showering and changing, I planned to go to the hospital to see Mrs. Davis immediately. To get to the garage, I had to pass through the garden. The sun was setting. Robert Davis was playing ball with Sarah Thompson and her child. Sarah Thompson had been standing by, watching, but as soon as I came out, Robert Davis suddenly went behind Sarah Thompson and held her wrist. The way he held the racket from my angle, it looked like he was embracing Sarah Thompson from behind. Sarah Thompson's cheeks were slightly red. She gave me a slightly provocative look and leaned back slightly, pressing closer to him. Robert, am I a bit clumsy? It's okay, I'll teach you. Timmy Thompson suddenly clapped his hands and shouted, Uncle Robert and Mom look like a couple. Timmy Thompson, don't talk nonsense, Sarah Thompson quickly chided softly. I walked through the garden without looking, striding towards the car parked not far away. As I reached the car, I suddenly remembered something. I looked back at the garden. The hibiscus flowers Mrs. Davis liked in the flower bed hadn't wilted yet. I turned and walked towards it, wanting to pick one to take to the hospital for her. But as I took 2 steps, Sarah Thompson suddenly pulled Timmy Thompson behind Robert Davis, looking terrified. Robert Davis immediately protected the mother and child. Emily Miller, what are you trying to do now? I'm warning you. I didn't look at the 3 of them. I just walked quickly to the flower bed, picked the 2 best blooms, and turned to leave. So I didn't see Sarah Thompson biting her lip, looking at my back thoughtfully, or Robert Davis frowning tightly, staring intently in the direction I had left, unmoving for a long time. Even when Sarah Thompson called his name several times, he seemed not to hear, giving no response. 3 years had passed, and Mrs. Davis's health had become increasingly frail. I waited at the hospital for a long time before she was briefly conscious. The caregiver and nurse looking after her said she didn't recognize people much anymore, but when I stood by her hospital bed with the hibiscus flowers, she recognized me at once. "Emily Miller, you're here." Tears welled up instantly. "I'm sorry, Mom. It took me so long to come see you." Mrs. Davis touched my face, her eyes full of heartache. "You're so thin. So thin. Well, at least you don't have to worry about dieting every day. You should still put on a little weight," Mrs. Davis said weakly. She looked at me, then at the flowers, and closed her eyes again. She was sometimes awake, sometimes already critically ill. I placed the hibiscus flowers on her bedside table and whispered in her ear, "Mom, you'll get better. When you recover, get a divorce. Leave the Davis family estate and live the free life you want." Mrs. Davis's deteriorating health was due to years of bottled-up resentment caused by her husband's constant infidelity and second family. At the most outrageous point, he had even brought the woman and children he kept outside back to the old Davis family mansion. Mrs. Davis became seriously ill from anger. Unable to bear the outside criticism, she had them sent away. Before leaving this world, my last remaining wish was for her. Those 3 years, I swallowed all the bitterness, enduring the torment without giving up, finding a way to escape back to the city. I rarely went back to the Davis family estate. On the rare occasions I returned to get things, I would always see scenes of Robert Davis playing with Sarah Thompson and her child. 3 years ago, such scenes would often stab my heart with intense pain. I was jealous, wronged, resentful, yet helpless. I spent my days drowning in those terrible negative emotions, unable to escape. But now I was indifferent. I had showered, changed into clean clothes. I had the kitchen prepare some nutritious broth and was getting ready to go back to the hospital with the things when Robert Davis called out to me. "There's something I need to tell you." I glanced at him, my voice calm. "Go ahead." Robert Davis didn't speak again, just stared intently at my face. This was the 6th day since I returned. Because I had been eating every meal with Mrs. Davis, I had gained 2 or 3 pounds in just a few days. Although I was still very thin overall, I no longer looked as gaunt as before. My skin had regained some radiance and my complexion was improving. My hair had been cut shorter, the dry, yellowed ends removed. It made me look a bit more childish. After all, I was only 22. A few days of rest, and my condition was back. Mom said, "You've been working hard accompanying her at the hospital. She keeps praising you." Robert Davis's eyes seemed to hold relief. "You've really improved over these 3 years. You're more sensible and obedient." He paused slightly. "The wedding date will have to be postponed further." He then looked at me. "Don't overthink it. This has nothing to do with Sarah Thompson." "All right," I interrupted him. "You can arrange it." Emily Miller. Robert Davis seemed a bit surprised. But I had already picked up my things and was walking out. This separation would be forever. I just wanted to spend more time with Mrs. Davis. "Are you angry?" Robert Davis stopped me again, grabbing my wrist. "No." I said, "It's fine. You can arrange whatever you want." I didn't want to create any drama or waste time on him. I said, deliberately docile, "Robert, I'll listen to you." Perhaps that long-lost address, Robert, touched Robert Davis's heart slightly. He looked at me, his eyes softening for a moment. "Emily Miller." He raised his hand as if to ruffle my hair like he used to, but Sarah Thompson's voice suddenly chimed from the master bedroom doorway upstairs. "Robert," I twisted my ankle. "Can you come take a look?" He instinctively turned his head. I took the opportunity to quickly walk out of the living room. Behind me, I heard Sarah Thompson's usual affected voice. "Is Emily Miller angry at me again?" I was just in so much pain that I couldn't help but call out to you. "No, she's not angry. Sit down. I'll call a doctor to check on you." I shook my head, shutting out their conversation, and walked quickly into the autumn breeze. In 4 more days, I would go home. Robert Davis started visiting the hospital frequently. Mrs. Davis already knew about my decision, so whenever he came, she would urge me to go back and rest, no longer happy to see us spending time alone together like before. The night before I left, I planned to stay at the hospital with Mrs. Davis, but Robert Davis came again. Taking advantage of her trip to the doctor's office, Mrs. Davis pulled me aside to talk. She sat on the hospital bed and touched my face for a long time. "Emily Miller, take good care of yourself. Mom will be well here too." She shed tears, and I cried too. Finally, like when she comforted me as a child, she kissed my face. "Go, Emily Miller. Never come back again." Walking out of the hospital room, I didn't dare to look back at her. I came to the Davis family estate at 3 years old, still a. Mrs. Davis raised me like her own daughter, bringing me up herself. My only remaining attachment to this alternate world was her, and only her. I returned to the Davis family estate and started sorting through my things, piece by piece. There was very little I could take. In the end, I only took all the photos with Mrs. Davis and the gold bracelet she gave me for my 18th birthday. All the photos with Robert Davis I tore up and burned. The things he had given me over the years were still untouched on the table in my room. I didn't take a single one. Daylight broke. Robert Davis returned from the hospital and the show began. As soon as his car stopped, Sarah Thompson ran down the stairs, crying, "Robert, save Timmy Thompson. I beg you, save Timmy Thompson." She threw herself into Robert Davis's arms, tears streaming down her face. I know Emily Miller resents me, but she can take out any anger she has on me. Why hurt Timmy Thompson? He's just a 7-year-old child. What happened? Sarah Thompson, take your time and tell me. This morning, I got clothes for Timmy Thompson. As soon as he put them on, he had an allergic reaction. His whole body broke out in a rash. The clothes were washed last night. But only Emily Miller went to the laundry room last night. She knows Timmy Thompson is allergic to seafood. She did this 3 years ago. When I came downstairs, Robert Davis's face was already livid with rage. Yes, 3 years ago, Timmy Thompson had a seafood allergic reaction and almost suffocated. The culprit was me, of course. At that time, I refused to admit it, made a huge scene, and in the argument, I pushed Sarah Thompson, and she just happened to hit the corner of the table. She almost lost an eye. Robert Davis was furious and personally sent me to the countryside. 3 years later, Timmy Thompson had a seafood allergic reaction again. The culprit was naturally me, the repeat offender. But this time, I didn't argue or make a scene. I just smiled slightly. Watching Sarah Thompson put on her performance, Robert Davis was enraged by my attitude. "Emily Miller, what do you have to say for yourself?" I shook my head. "I have nothing to say. Because the wedding was postponed, you did this out of resentment towards Sarah Thompson, didn't you?" "No." "Then you haven't changed your stubborn ways." I smiled. "Believe whatever you want. As the saying goes, if anything bad happens to him, what would you do? Kill me. Or send me back to that godforsaken place." Looking heartbroken, I looked at Robert Davis and said deliberately, "Anyway, you've never believed me. No matter how I explain, you won't listen or believe me. So I have nothing to say. I can only prove my innocence this way." After saying that, I casually picked up the small knife that was already on the coffee table. "Emily Miller, what are you doing?" I looked at Robert Davis one last time, my smile desolate. That look didn't need practice. More than 10 years of being together day and night, like family, like lovers, with sincere and unadulterated affection. Now, everything had fallen apart, people and things changed. It was a result that the young and naive me had never imagined. Thankfully, it was all about to end. My heart was free of any lingering attachments. The system said it would block the pain, so the knife almost went straight into my heart. But I didn't feel any pain. My body went limp and fell to the ground. The snow-white long dress bloomed with vivid red flowers. It must have been a shocking and unforgettable sight, because I heard countless chaotic sounds around me. The most frantic, most desperate was Robert Davis. But I closed my eyes, gently closing them in the pool of blood. "Emily Miller, Emily Miller." Robert Davis tried to cover the constantly bleeding wound, but it was futile. He clearly felt my body slowly growing cold, my breath weakening, nearing its end. Sarah Thompson was already scared stiff, eyes wide, standing aside, her face pale. The staff were in chaos. Some were calling for an ambulance, some were shouting helplessly. Some fainted from fear, and one person, frozen with terror, suddenly dropped to her knees. It was him. He gave me money and told me to do it. He told me to do it 3 years ago, too. The staff member must have gone mad from the sudden turn of events, pointing at Sarah Thompson and blurting out everything. Miss Emily Miller was framed. She was framed from beginning to end. It was this wicked woman. She even used her own child. Robert Davis looked sharply at Sarah Thompson, but Sarah Thompson suddenly screamed and scrambled back towards the stairs, running upstairs. Timmy Thompson was still upstairs. He was indeed allergic to seafood. But taking medicine in time could alleviate the symptoms. It's just that no one expected me to make such a move, disrupting the rhythm of Sarah Thompson's play. And now, none of this mattered to me. Perhaps the perpetrator ultimately suffered the consequences through her own child. Maybe this was karma. Emily Miller, do you want to go back now or watch the show? I smiled and shook my head at the system. Let's go. I want to go home now. I couldn't wait to see my loving parents and my fiancé in my original world. The system had told me several times that, traversing through countless worlds, it had never seen a fiancé more devoted than mine. So deep down, I had long yearned to return as soon as possible. I had no interest in watching this drama involving people who were no longer important to me. Yes, when I no longer had love or hate for them, I had no interest in anything that was about to happen to them. The moment after saying that, the Emily Miller of this world bled out in Robert Davis's arms, taking her last breath. Everything from then on was irrelevant to me. In the subtle play of light and shadow, I saw a thin figure standing by the window. And as I slowly opened my eyes, the medical equipment by the hospital bed suddenly began beeping. The figure turned sharply, looking at me, trembling slightly. I saw surprise, excitement, and nervous disbelief in his eyes. But beneath that complex emotion, there was a lingering layer of sadness that wouldn't dissipate. In that instant, memories flooded back. As my memory began to recover, I finally dared to believe that I had finally returned. I had finally come home. My heart clenched with sudden sorrow, and tears rolled down. Julian Miller. Seeing him again felt like an eternity had passed. But on the patient chart at the bedside, my age was 22. In this world, only 2 years had passed. But those 2 years that I spent unconscious in bed were like an eternity of torment for my family and the one I loved. The system often told me over the years that if it weren't for the deep obsession of my parents and the one I loved in my original world, I would never have had this chance to return. Especially my fiancé, Julian Miller. He had sworn an oath before the gods, willing to trade half of his life for my recovery and longevity. But I had been so terrible to him before. From our engagement at 18 until the accident at 21, I had argued with him almost daily, wanting to break off the engagement. I hated these outdated expectations, hated his obsessive, almost pathological devotion, hated a life I could see the end of from the beginning. In the end, all my resentment and dissatisfaction poured out onto Julian Miller. I argued with him, gave him the cold shoulder, deliberately embarrassed him in front of many people, and did things he hated, hoping he would break off the engagement. After my accident, the doctor said I would never wake up. My parents repeatedly advised Julian Miller to cancel the engagement and not waste his time on me. But he wouldn't listen. He stayed by my side for 2 whole years, doing even better than the most professional caregivers. I lay there for 2 years, always clean and spotless, without any odor. The system said that what Julian Miller did for me moved even machines like them, which had no human emotions. It instructed me to take good care of him and stay with him after I recovered, because he might genuinely not live to a ripe old age. I agreed. And I had secretly resolved to make up for all the years I had wronged Julian Miller. I would marry him, be his wife, and stay with him for a lifetime. But I never expected that after my body began to recover rapidly, Julian Miller would suddenly propose breaking off the engagement. In the year you were unconscious, I often regretted it. If I had agreed to break off the engagement back then, you wouldn't have argued with me, wouldn't have run away from home in a fit of pique in the middle of the night, and this car accident wouldn't have happened. Julian Miller pushed up his glasses. He looked at me and smiled faintly. Emily Miller, you're still so young. You really shouldn't be tied to a man you don't like for a lifetime. I'm giving you your freedom. He handed me the family heirloom that our families exchanged during our engagement. I saw his middle finger was bare. The engagement ring he always wore was gone, leaving only a faint mark. And my middle finger was also bare. I suddenly remembered that I had taken off the ring after the engagement ceremony and never wore it again. An unspeakable ache spread through my chest. My throat felt blocked. I had so many things I wanted to say, but at that moment, I didn't know where to begin. Seeing that I didn't speak, Julian Miller didn't linger. I'm leaving. Get some rest and recover well. I might not be able to pick you up when you're discharged. Emily Miller, please take care of yourself. Julian Miller slowly stood up. His tall figure was cast in a long shadow by the light from the window, looking lonely and bleak. My vision had blurred at some point, so I couldn't see the emotion in his eyes. After I leave, no one will bother you anymore. He raised his hand, as if wanting to touch my face one last time. But he dropped it just as quickly. I watched him turn around. The moment he took a step, I finally reached out and gently held his fingers. Julian Miller, where is your ring? I felt him tremble slightly. After the tremble, he instinctively tried to pull his hand away, but I held on tighter. Julian Miller, where is your engagement ring? He turned and looked down at me, his Adam's apple bobbing violently. When he spoke, his voice was slightly hoarse. It's in the box. Get it out. Emily Miller, get it out. My hand still lacked strength. Julian Miller's lips were tightly pressed together. He looked at me deeply. In the end, he pulled his hand away, opened the box on the side, took out the ring box, and handed it to me. I took the box, opened it, and took out the ring. Only then did I look up at him. Julian Miller, give me your hand. But he stood still, his long fingers slowly curling into a fist. Emily Miller, you don't have to do this. Don't have to do what, don't have to sacrifice yourself for the sake of repaying me. Do you think I'm that kind of person? Julian Miller didn't answer. But the eyes that were always clouded with a layer of sadness seemed to hold a faint glimmer of light. If I wanted to repay you, there are many better ways. Do you think I would give up my whole life just to repay you? Emily Miller, why? I was asking myself the same question. Perhaps the years I spent in the alternate world finally taught me to cherish the person in front of me. Perhaps the Emily Miller of this world had already fallen deeply in love with Julian Miller deep down. She was just too young, too immature, and didn't know her true feelings. But now, the Emily Miller standing here, her most real possession was a sincere heart. I looked up at him, blinked, and smiled. There was no need to recount the past pain and grievances to the person who loved me, only to make them sad. Julian Miller, I had a very long dream for the past 2 years. In the dream, we lived our whole lives together, and it was very happy. In the dream, I told myself, if I wake up, I'll marry you. Of course, if you still want to marry me, if you still want to be with me. I looked at Julian Miller seriously, waiting for his answer. But he was silent for a long while before speaking again. Emily Miller, perhaps you've forgotten some things from the past after sleeping for 2 years. When you remember what the real me is like, and if you are still willing to accept it, then we will get married. What was the real Julian Miller like? The system hadn't told me in detail, only briefly mentioned a few things, saying he was a few years older than me and had a terrifying possessiveness towards me. Back then, being younger, I couldn't help but want to escape, couldn't help but resist being with him. But I never expected that he was exactly like the sickly Yandra, male leads written in novels. Not only was his love for me stiflingly intense, it was almost pathological. In the Miller family mansion, he had a private study filled with photos of me from childhood to adulthood. All my personal belongings were carefully preserved, even the glass marbles I played with as a child and a broken doll. My 18th birthday photo was made into a huge poster and hung on the wall directly opposite the door. What felt even more bizarre was that the love letters I wrote back to other boys in middle school were also here. Julian Miller. I looked at him in disbelief. Where did you get all these things? Aren't you angry? He handed me a warm cup. Don't you think I'm a freak and hate me more? I thought carefully. I didn't hate him, nor did I think he was a freak. I just felt an unspeakable pang of heartache. Because in all those past years, I had never given any response to his affection. And this kind of affection, which would have scared the 18-year-old Emily Miller, didn't scare the me who had lived 2 lives. Also, I don't want to hide anything from you. Since 3 years ago, when you insisted on breaking off the engagement, I started seeing a doctor and taking medication. In the 2 years you were unconscious, my dosage doubled. Julian Miller's voice was calm, without a ripple, as if he had already prepared for the worst and could accept anything with composure. Emily Miller, you see, my heart is actually very fragile. If you agree to be with me and one day want to end our relationship, I might completely break down and do something extreme to myself again. You're still very young. I don't want to hold you back. If we had children, I wouldn't want them to have a father who isn't healthy. He finished speaking and looked at me quietly, as if waiting for the final verdict. I put down the cup and gently held his trembling hand. Can it be cured? Julian Miller seemed startled, then nodded. Yes, but just tell me how to cure it. His fingers were trembling badly. After a while, he spoke in a deep voice, stay by my side. Never leave me. After saying this, Julian Miller shifted his gaze. He was probably afraid to look at me, not wanting to see hesitation or other emotions in my eyes. The light from the study lamp fell on his face. I clearly saw his tightly pursed lips, clearly felt his ragged breathing. I said nothing, just slowly released his hand. The moment I let go, I distinctly felt Julian Miller's breath hitch. As his eyes darkened, I suddenly stood on my tiptoes and kissed him gently. Julian Miller, let's go get married tomorrow. A year later, my body had fully recovered, and the wedding with Julian Miller was scheduled to take place as planned. The night before the wedding, Julian Miller was downstairs seeing off guests. As I went back to the room to shower and rest, I suddenly heard the system's voice, which I hadn't heard in a long time. Emily Miller, the Davis family estate is completely chaotic now. 3 months ago, Mrs. Davis successfully got divorced. She got a large sum of money and is now traveling the world with a few close friends. Isn't that great? I was incredibly happy. I hadn't expected to hear news of Mrs. Davis, or to know that she was now so free and happy. Yes, things are great for Mrs. Davis, but Mr. Davis is furious, almost driven mad by the divorce. He feels very humiliated. The Davis family estate is a mess. After you died, Robert Davis found out the truth about many things that happened before. Also, in the 3 years you were sent away, Robert Davis actually sent people to give you money every 3 months, but Sarah Thompson secretly intercepted it. I find it ridiculous. You can't entirely blame Sarah Thompson. If he had treated me even halfway like a sister, he wouldn't have let me be bullied and manipulated. Yes, we all knew the main culprit was him. However, Robert Davis hit Sarah Thompson, and he hit her pretty hard. Mr. Davis couldn't stand it and intervened. But then it was revealed that Sarah Thompson had been involved with him shortly after moving into the Davis family estate. She had been desperately hiding it because she wanted to marry into the Davis family properly. Robert Davis was almost driven to death by anger at that time. He kicked the mother and son out. Oh, right. Sarah Thompson's son, Timmy Thompson. Didn't he have an allergic reaction to seafood that day and didn't get medicine in time? As a result, he was delayed. His throat swelled, causing severe oxygen deprivation and suffocation. He barely survived, but he's been in a coma ever since. The subsequent medical and rehabilitation costs are ridiculously high, but Robert Davis won't give her a single penny. Also, Sarah Thompson's ex-husband, knowing his son was in trouble, cut off all child support. I heard he's having a lawyer file a lawsuit to reclaim the property they had divided up for the mother and son before. Sarah Thompson is in a terrible state now. Her reputation is ruined. All her relatives and friends are avoiding her. The system sighed, sounding a bit regretful. I thought for a moment, then asked, "You didn't just come to tell me all this, did you?" "I came to find you because of Robert Davis, Emily Miller. After you died, Robert Davis went completely mad. Perhaps your chosen method of death had too great an impact on him. He refused to bury you. He prayed to gods and goddesses, thought of countless absurd ways to revive you, and somehow eventually found us. What does he want? He wants to see you." "No need," I said. The system replied, "That's what I thought at first, but he's willing to make a deal with us. He's willing to exchange everything he has, just to see you once." "Emily Miller, I thought of your husband. He's very popular in our system world. My colleagues and I don't want to see him die young, so my heart moved. So what? I asked Robert Davis to trade half his lifespan, and he agreed. I was somewhat surprised to hear that, but soon I felt happy. So, Julian Miller can live a long life now. Of course, but ultimately, it still requires your decision. Do you agree or disagree? I agree. I didn't hesitate at all. Let alone half his lifespan, I would be even happier if I could give him my whole life. That's great. So, when should we arrange for him to meet you? I looked at myself in the mirror. My skin was radiant, my complexion rosy, a vibrant flower nourished by love. I reached up and took off my pearl earrings. Could you please give him one of our wedding invitations? Tomorrow is my wedding with Julian Miller. Let him come as a guest. Oh, right. Remember to tell him to bring enough money. Julian Miller and I had already discussed it. All guests didn't need to bring any wedding gifts or donations. But there would be a charity auction at the venue, and all proceeds would go towards supporting women and children in underprivileged communities. Robert Davis was no different from a stranger to me, but since he had some use now, I would naturally exploit him without hesitation. When my parents held my hand and walked me to Julian Miller's side, they were in tears, and I was teary-eyed as well. As Julian Miller held my hand, I saw the gold bracelet on my wrist. In that other world, Mrs. Davis should be traveling among mountains and rivers with a few friends now. Knowing she was well, my last attachment to that world slowly began to fade. From then on, Emily Miller and Julian Miller would spend a lifetime together in this world. I knew Robert Davis was sitting among the guests seating below, but I didn't know which row or where he was sitting, and I didn't care at all. This was an incredibly important day in my life. I didn't want any regrets. After exchanging wedding rings, Julian Miller and I kissed. There seemed to be a small stir among the guests below, but it quickly subsided. Throughout, Julian Miller and I didn't look down at the guests. After the reception, as Julian Miller and I were driving back to the wedding villa, a black sedan quietly followed us. I knew perfectly well that Robert Davis was in that car, but Julian Miller was unaware. However, when it came to matters between him and me, he was incredibly sensitive. So, in just a moment, Julian Miller sensed something was wrong. He held my hand, his grip tightening little by little, until my knuckles ached slightly. Julian Miller, what's wrong? He didn't speak, just pulled me into his arms and held me tight. We had both had a good amount of wine tonight. The scent of rich wine lingered on him, but it still smelled good. Emily Miller, I feel like I'm in a dream. Julian Miller looked down at me, his eyes holding a sense of vague loneliness. I didn't say anything, just hooked my arms around his neck and tilted my head back to kiss him. In the months since we had been together, we had been intimate many times. But Julian Miller had never gone all the way with me. I knew what he was thinking. No matter what, he always considered me first. He didn't want me to lose all my options, in case I regretted it and wanted to call off the wedding before the marriage was finalized. But how could he know that the current me had already fallen deeply in love with him? Julian Miller, stop overthinking. I kissed him clumsily, but passionately for a while before stopping. Tonight is our wedding night. After tonight, you won't be able to leave me, because I'm going to cling to you for a lifetime. In the flickering light and shadow, Julian Miller frowned deeply. I don't know how long it took before he finally smiled. Emily Miller, I'll savor every moment. That night, the black sedan carrying Robert Davis was parked outside my wedding villa all night. I didn't go to see him, nor did I let the staff let him through the gates. The lights in the master bedroom of Julian Miller and my wedding villa were on until 2 in the morning, not yet turned off. Everything was self-evident. By the floor-to-ceiling window, I lowered my head instinctively, wanting to press my face against the glass. But what I touched was Julian's warm palm. My forehead touched the scar left in his palm. He had several such scars on his arm as well. I didn't ask about them, I just pressed kisses there. Julian Miller then held me, my back pressed against his chest. He lowered his head and kissed the back of my ear. In the intertwining of our hot breaths, we became more deeply entwined. Julian Miller, I called out softly, my voice trembling. It was a feeling I had never experienced before, a little frightening. Emily Miller, what should you call me now after the storm? His rhythm slowed, but the lingering caresses tormented me, leaving me breathless and tearful. Husband, husband, my voice was fractured. Along with the rustling spring rain outside, my body seemed to have a downpour, soaking Julian Miller completely. Emily Miller, he clasped my fingers, lowering his head to gently bite my neck. Emily Miller, do you like me like this? I nodded instinctively, then shook my head in shy panic, but finally I sobbed and whimpered, obediently agreeing. Yes, I like it. Yes, I like it. He kissed the marks on my neck, then lowered his head and kissed me passionately. When the kiss turned intense, I was lifted into the clouds. Emily Miller, if you like it, stay with me forever, okay? Okay. From Robert Davis's perspective, that thing called the system didn't break its promise. He did see Emily Miller, but only saw her sitting in the guest seating. Her seat was very far back and off to the side. Therefore, he only saw her from a distance, wearing a white gown, being given away by her parents to her husband's side. He seemed to be crying the whole time, but even his crying was breathtakingly beautiful. Her husband loved her very, very much. Because from beginning to end, his eyes never left her for a second. For the first half of the wedding, he was very calm. But when the groom kissed the bride at the end, the tight string in his heart suddenly snapped. He crushed the glass wine cup with his bare hands. The fragments pierced the soft flesh of his palm, and blood covered his hand. There was a small commotion among the people around him, but it quickly subsided. Guests in the front rows also turned to look at him. But he never looked at them from beginning to end. Later, he drove and followed them all the way back to the wedding villa. He still didn't see her. And his time was running out. He stayed outside the gates all night, watching the lights in their bedroom in the distance, which didn't go out until dawn. He felt numb, as if he couldn't even feel the pain anymore. He had always thought that sooner or later he would marry her. He had always thought that since Emily Miller came to the Davis family estate at 3, she would stay in the Davis family estate for her entire life. But he never expected that she, utterly disappointed in him, would ultimately choose such a decisive way to leave. Her white dress was soaked with blood. Her body turned cold and stiff in his arms. She would never cry for him, argue with him, or express her grievances to him again. She would never call his name sweetly and cling to him. He felt like he had had an absurd dream. He himself didn't even understand why he treated her that way in those last few years. Why did he listen to Sarah Thompson and actually send her to a remote mountain town? Why didn't he visit her even once in 3 years actually? If he had gone just once in between, he might have discovered what Sarah Thompson was doing. There might have been a chance to salvage things between them. But he didn't go even once. Robert Davis despised his own foolishness and ridiculousness, and in the long days and nights of torment, he chose to give up on himself. When he came, he donated all the money he could bring. Emily Miller suffered terribly in the remote mountain town for those 3 years. At her lowest point, she couldn't even afford sanitary pads. That's why he would want to do something like this now, he thought. And now, this was the only thing he could do for her. Dawn broke. He had to go back. His car drove through the thick fog, returning to his world. When the fog cleared, Robert Davis's vision suddenly caught a car speeding wildly towards him. Then he saw Sarah Thompson's haggard, frantic face. He instinctively wanted to steer away to avoid her, but then stopped. The moment the two cars collided, he saw Timmy Thompson, still unconscious, in the passenger seat. As the violent crash sounded, the agonizing pain of broken bones and torn flesh also swept over him. And then, everything fell silent in the fire. It's good, he thought. People like them should die so tragically, while Emily Miller would live a long life. In his final moments of consciousness, Robert Davis felt himself transported back many years. Emily Miller was only 3 then. His mother held her hand. She hid shyly behind his mother, meekly calling him Robert. He was less than 10 years old then. He reached out his hand to her. She hesitated for a moment, then placed her small, plump hand in his palm. He held it. He thought this time he would never let her go again. The end.